What's going on, everybody? Cannaclinical here, and today I want to give a brief overview of cannabis indica versus sativa. The plant itself has always interested me in addition to the ways in which the effects of the different strains can differ. Of course, there is a certain extent to which the effects could be attributed to subjective assessment, but there does seem to be a general theme or consensus for how indicas and sativas act both as a medicine and in how the plant phenotypically expresses itself. Let's start with the effects. Cannabis indica can be roughly summarized using sayings such as indica, couch, and this generally refers to how cannabis indica strains or indica dominant strains tend to relax you and relieve pain while giving you this kind of heavy body high that makes you want to veg out on the couch and eat a bag of Doritos. This also means that it tends to have different medicinal applications than cannabis sativa does, and in general, this includes pain relief, muscle relaxation, nausea relief, problems with sleep, and mental relaxation. It also tends to increase your appetite as well. Now, I'll admit that it seems that indica and sativa seems to describe more some level of phenotypic variation of the plant. While the CBD and THC ratios do differ generally between them, a lot of hybridization exists, and so a sativa strain may have some characteristics of indica just by virtue of this hybridization, and exist more on a spectrum rather than as two mutually exclusive classes of cannabis. Cannabis indica tends to have a higher ratio of CBD to THC, while sativa usually has a higher THC to CBD ratio. Higher CBD to THC ratios can mitigate the psychoactive effect of THC while also reducing the anxiogenic symptoms that high doses of THC can bring. In general, it seems that the consensus is that indica is suited for nighttime use, whereas sativa is suited for daytime use. Strains such as Northern Lights, OG Kush, Bubba Kush, and in fact many varieties of Kush tend to be indica dominant, in addition to Granddaddy Purple, Death Star, Blueberry, Bubba Kush, Grape Ape, and some skunk crosses such as Super Skunk, and there are literally thousands of them, so I could not possibly get to all of them. Sativa tends to be more of a head rush. It produces more of a clear-headed high, if that makes sense, rather than the classic numbing indica high that in general dominates in the popular culture perception of what cannabis is and what it does and how it affects people. I've seen a few sources claim that it increases serotonin levels while indica strains increase dopamine, but the truth is that THC, generally the most common and most abundant psychoactive compound in cannabis, just in general, what you're going to find on the market, does have scientific evidence to its effect in reducing serotonin reuptake, and it's kind of, I guess, similar in effect to how traditional reuptake inhibitors work, but it's through a different mechanism. THC also increases dopamine levels. Sour Diesel, Durban Poison, Green Crack, Jack Herer, various varieties of haze, Strawberry Cough, and Amnesia are popular varieties of sativa, though again, way too many of them to name. Now let's get onto the plant itself. Sativa plants tend to grow taller and lankier with longer spaces between nodes, also known as internodal length. So indicas tend to be bushier and shorter in contrast. The leaves are thinner, while indicas have more broad fan leaves. As with all cannabis in the beginning stages of the flowering stage, the plant tends to do one final stretch as it prepares to start producing buds, and with sativas, this final stretch is generally much more dramatic than it is for indica strains, sometimes growing to double or triple its original size. To conclude, there's a lot of hybridization, and this is a very old plant. We're talking thousands of years as an agriculturally relevant entity and a medicinally relevant entity for, various purposes, including its food, its fibrous stock, and industrial purposes, and its medicinal properties of the resin. Very few strains out there that you'll find at your local dispensary are going to be pure indicas or sativas because of this hybridization. Rather, you're more likely to be using a sativa dominant or indica dominant with more prominent characteristics of either, such as those mentioned throughout this video, or a more balanced hybrid of the two. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and new strains are being produced every year. As we go through this series, we'll begin to understand the true depth of cannabis's diversity as a medicine and how we can use each different strain and create new ones to accommodate different illnesses. Tailor the THC and CBD ratios and tailor the effects of different strains to accommodate different illnesses, basically. One modern and high-profile example of this would be Charlotte's Web, a CBD-rich strain used for treatment-resistant epilepsy. This was an early example in this resurgence of legal medicinal cannabis in America, and it really powerfully captures its potential as a plant, especially in the wake of a cannabis-derived CBD drug getting its FDA approval in the form of Epidiolex earlier this year, and I probably butchered that pronunciation. As an aside, I have mixed opinions on that, of course, because this is all while the plant itself remains in one of the most stringently regulated categories of drugs in America, but it's not all bad since its influence is being exerted somewhere legally. Ultimately, it's a net positive to the treatment of those conditions, and I'm definitely happy for the people who previously did not have that option that now have that option. But in the back of my mind, I can't help but think that it's a dirty move on the part of pharmaceutical companies like GW Pharmaceuticals, who hold the patent for this, to seek approval for a proprietary product from a plant that is, first of all, thousands of years old, that you can't patent on its own, but it's also currently Schedule 1 and therefore inaccessible to a good deal of the country, even still, even while most of the country has legal cannabis in some form or another. It's literally cannabis-derived CBD. It takes advantage of the fact that people do not have another legal option short of moving to a legal state, which frankly, in the face of medical bills, from finding out what's actually wrong to treating it with additional therapies, I'm sure it's not an option for many families that are affected. Therefore, their legal drug is the only feasible option. Meanwhile, cannabis itself would be orders of magnitude more accessible, cheaper, and benefit a much broader patient population across many different conditions, including these rare epileptic conditions, and just as effective as this proprietary drug since it's taken from cannabis itself. Still, the FDA and DEA remain steadfast in the idea that cannabis should remain Schedule 1, even though both THC and CBD exist in FDA-approved medications at this point, with the first one, Marinol, being approved in 1985. Anyways, that's about all I have for you guys today. Short, relatively, sweet, and to the point. I'll get into the nitty-gritty in subsequent videos, so check those out in the medicinal diversity playlist on my channel if you aren't already. If you haven't already, hit the like button if you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to also hit that notification bell to be alerted with new videos. Until next time, stay medicated, guys.